My friend once told me. You can't forgive him. I just shrugged and said, forgiveness is freedom. But I didn't tell him who taught me that. It wasn't in a sermon, or a book, or some motivational video. It was in a coffee shop, a Tuesday afternoon with her. The first time I noticed her, she wasn't doing anything remarkable. She was standing at the counter, tapping the edge of a sugar packet against her thumb. The barista knew her order without asking. Black. No cream. Extra hot. That kind of consistency said more about her than any introduction could. I was 2 people behind her in line, and for some reason, I remembered it. When it was my turn, I said, half under my breath, same as hers. The barista looked at me, surprised. Are you sure? It's strong. I wasn't sure, but I nodded anyway. She turned her head then, just slightly. A glance, nothing more. But it was enough to make me shift my weight, suddenly aware of my shoes, my hands, my voice. We didn't talk that day. But the next week, she was there again. Same time. Same black coffee. I was there too, pretending it was coincidence, though I had rearranged my schedule to pass by. This time, she was at the small corner table, reading. A paperback novel, the spine creased deep, like it had traveled with her. She caught me looking once. Not a long look, just enough to let me know she noticed. I thought about leaving right after I got my drink. But then she spoke. You'll regret that, she said. I froze. What? She nodded at my cup. That coffee. It's a little brutal if you're not used to it. I laughed, awkward. Guess I like brutal. She gave the smallest smile. We'll see. It wasn't flirtation. Not exactly. More like recognition. Over the next month, it kept happening. Her at that corner table, me pretending I didn't expect her. The conversation stayed light. Books, weather, how this coffee shop always played music just a little too loud in the mornings. But something was shifting under the surface. One day, I tried to text a friend about it, just to let it out. But I stared at the screen too long, never hit send, and locked my phone instead. It felt too private, like naming it out loud would ruin it. Loneliness doesn't always show in big ways. Sometimes it's just sitting with a full cup of coffee long after it's gone cold, waiting for something you can't explain. The day it changed, I remember she was folding and refolding a napkin in her hands, not looking at me. Her hair fell across her face, and she didn't push it back. She asked, casually, So you're here often? Only on Tuesdays. Why Tuesdays? I hesitated. It started as coincidence. Then maybe not. That time, she looked right at me. Not the glance at the counter. Not the quick acknowledgement. A full look, steady, like she was weighing something she hadn't meant to. I felt it in my chest, a shift, though neither of us moved. I should have left it there. Paid, said goodbye, carried the moment with me. But as I walked toward the door, my phone buzzed. A new message. From her. I stopped, confused. She had my number? It was only one line. You forgot your book last week. Want it back? I stood there, the door half open, not sure if I'd just walked into something, or if I'd been walking toward it all along. The text should have been simple. She was returning a book. Nothing more. But when I read it again, I realized she hadn't asked if I wanted it back. She'd asked if I wanted it from her. We met the next day, not Tuesday. That alone felt like crossing some quiet line. She had the book in her bag, a folded paperback with the cover bent from use. Sorry, I said when she handed it over. For what? Leaving it. She shook her head, a dry smile. People leave things all the time. The trick is deciding which ones matter enough to come back for. Her tone was casual, but my chest caught on it. I wanted to say something, anything, but instead I only traced the crease in the cover with my thumb. We ended up sitting outside. She ordered tea this time, not coffee. I asked her why. Some days are easier with tea, she said. I nodded like I understood, though I didn't, not fully. There was a silence, not heavy but searching. Finally, she asked, "How old are you?" 24. Ah. She stirred her tea slowly. "You remind me of my son's friends." The words stung in ways I hadn't expected. Not because of the comparison, but because of the quiet wall it built between us. Still, she went on. "I was married once. A long time ago. We don't really talk." I wanted to ask who left who, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "Do you forgive him?" Her eyes flicked to mine, surprised. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you drink coffee like it punishes you." She laughed, soft but unsteady, and I looked down quickly, embarrassed at how much I wanted to keep her laughing. That night, I caught myself imagining things I shouldn't. Sitting in her kitchen, maybe, helping her with groceries. Washing dishes beside her, sleeves rolled up, like we belonged in the same small space. It was stupid, reckless even, but once the thought was there, it didn't leave. The next time we met, she was carrying a heavy tote bag from the market. Without thinking, I reached for it. "I've got it," I said. "You don't have to, I want to." She let me take it, though her hand lingered a second longer on the strap. That pause stayed with me. We walked in silence for half a block, my shoulder brushing close to hers but never touching. When we stopped, she said, almost too lightly, "Careful. People might get the wrong idea." I wanted to ask what idea, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I just handed her the bag at her door. She took it with a small nod, then touched my arm, barely, as if to steady herself, or maybe me. It lasted only a second, but it burned all the way home. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It wasn't supposed to become routine. But it did. Tuesdays. Sometimes Thursdays. Occasionally the weekend if she happened to be near the coffee shop. It wasn't the coffee. It wasn't the books. It was her. One evening, I saw her outside, waiting for the bus. Grocery bags at her feet. She looked tired, distracted. Without thinking, I slowed. "You don't drive?" I asked. "Sold the car last year. Less hassle. Need a ride?" She hesitated. Long enough that I nearly took it back. Then she said, "If it's not trouble." It wasn't. But when she slid into the passenger seat, her bag brushing my arm, it felt like more trouble than I could handle. Her building was quiet when we arrived. She unlocked the door, then paused, holding it halfway open. "You could carry the bags up, if you want." I nodded too quickly. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of lavender and old books. A lamp burned low in the corner. Homey, but solitary. She set her keys down. I lingered by the counter, unsure where to stand. She busied herself unloading fruit, bread, tea. Too precise. Too careful. "Thanks for this," she said without looking up. "No problem. You should probably go, though." The way she said it, clipped, decisive, it landed harder than it should have. I almost left. Hand already on the strap of my bag. Then she spoke again, softer. "You remind me of when things were simpler." I turned back. "Is that a good thing?" Her hand stilled on the fruit bowl. "It's complicated." The silence stretched. I noticed how close we stood, the small kitchen making it impossible not to. My chest tightened with something unsaid. Then the knock. Sharp, sudden. She stiffened. Crossed to the door. A neighbor, asking about a package. They talked briefly, her voice lighter, practiced. By the time she shut the door, something between us had snapped back into place. A line redrawn. "You should go," she said again, but this time her eyes didn't quite meet mine. The next time we saw each other, it was different. A friend of mine walked past the cafe, spotted us. He raised an eyebrow later. "She's older, man. What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. But the question sat with me, like grit under the skin. A week passed before I saw her again. When I did, she looked almost relieved. Or maybe I imagined it. We sat across from each other, both quieter than usual. I kept tracing the rim of my cup. She folded and unfolded a napkin, over and over. Finally I said, "Do you ever wish?" and stopped. Her gaze lifted, steady, waiting. "Wish what?" "That things were different." She didn't answer. But her hand, resting on the table, shifted closer to mine. Not touching. Almost. For a moment, the cafe noise faded. Just her breathing, my heartbeat. Her lips parted like she might speak, or something more. Then she drew back. "It's late," she said. And just like that, the moment was gone. It happened on a Wednesday, which already felt wrong. We never saw each other midweek. But she texted, "Are you around?" And I didn't think twice before saying yes. We ended up on a bench near the park, the kind of place you go when you don't want to be noticed. The evening was cool, leaves drifting across the path. She held her thermos of tea in both hands like she needed the weight of it. "You're quiet tonight," I said. "I've been thinking." "About what?" She took a long sip, buying time. "About what people say, about what they think." I shifted on the bench, suddenly restless. "Does it matter?" "Of course it matters." Her tone was sharper than I expected. Then softer, almost apologetic. "You're young. You should be somewhere else. With someone else." I didn't know what to do with that. My first instinct was to laugh it off, but the knot in my chest stopped me. "You don't get it," I said. "Then tell me." The words caught in my throat. I wanted to tell her about the nights I thought of her voice before I fell asleep, how I replayed the way her hand lingered on my arm. But I only managed, "I don't just show up for coffee." She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes were steady, but her grip on the thermos tightened. "You think this is simple?" she asked. "No. But that doesn't mean it's nothing." A bird darted across the path. She followed it with her eyes, avoiding mine. For a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer at all. "I don't want to hurt you," she said finally. "You're not. Not yet." We sat there in silence, people passing on the path, a child's laugh carrying from the playground. None of it touched us. Finally, she spoke again, voice low. "When I left my marriage, I swore I'd never blur lines again. That I'd keep everything clean." I heard the word clean and felt something in me twist. "And now?" I asked. Her hand brushed against mine on the bench. Not intentional, maybe, but she didn't move it away. I felt the warmth of her skin through the faintest touch. "No," she said, barely audible. "I don't know what I'm doing." I turned then, ready to close the distance, to finally bridge the months of almosts. My breath caught halfway. Her lips parted, eyes on me, no retreat this time. Just waiting. And yet, something stopped us. A jogger passed too close, breaking the stillness, forcing her hand back to her lap. The spell cracked. She exhaled, shaky, then whispered, "What do you want from me?" The question hung there, heavy, unfinished. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. After that night on the bench, I thought something would shift. Thought maybe the question she asked, "What do you want from me?" would hang between us until one of us finally answered. But she disappeared instead. 2 weeks. No Tuesday coffees. No messages. No excuses. Just absence. At first, I told myself she was busy. Work. Family. Something ordinary. But the longer it stretched, the heavier it sat. Every time I walked past the cafe, I looked toward her corner table, half expecting her. Half hoping. Nothing. Finally, I saw her again, not in the cafe but outside the market. She was with someone. A boy, teenage, lanky, maybe 16. He carried a grocery bag and argued lightly about the weight of it. Her son. I didn't need her to introduce him. I just knew. She spotted me before I could walk away. Her smile was brief, polite, nothing like before. "Hi," she said. "Hey." Her son glanced at me, then back at her. "You know him?" "A neighbor," she answered quickly. Too quickly. I nodded, forcing a half smile, and kept walking. That night, I almost texted her. You could have told me. But I didn't. I typed it out, stared at the words, then erased them before the message could even deliver. Instead, I left my phone face down on the nightstand and lay awake, playing the scene over and over. Her voice, neighbor, like she had folded me neatly out of the story. The next Tuesday, I went to the cafe anyway. Ordered coffee. Sat in her spot. It felt wrong, like wearing someone else's coat. Too warm in places, empty in others. I waited an hour, maybe more, but she didn't come. The barista asked if I wanted a refill. I shook my head and left the cup unfinished. Days blurred after that. I stopped checking the time on Tuesdays. Stopped walking by the park bench. Tried to convince myself it hadn't mattered as much as it did. But every quiet evening seemed to circle back to her. The way she held her thermos. The way she folded napkins into sharp creases. The way her voice caught on. I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. One night, standing outside her building, I thought about knocking. Just once. No plan, no speech. Just knock. But the light in her window went dark before I could move. So I turned back. Hands in my pockets. Words unsaid. The door stayed closed. It wasn't planned. I wasn't supposed to see her again. But one evening, coming back from work, I spotted her at the corner of her building, struggling with a bag of groceries. The same lavender scent drifted in the air when I stepped closer. Need help? I asked. She looked up, startled. For a second, I thought she'd say no. But she only nodded and handed me the bag without a word. We climbed the stairs in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing harder than the bag in my hands. Inside, the apartment hadn't changed. The lamp glowed low. A kettle hissed faintly in the kitchen. She set down her keys and leaned against the counter, her shoulders tired in a way that felt older than she was. You disappeared, I said quietly. I know. She didn't look at me. It was easier that way. Easier for who? That made her pause. Finally, she exhaled, a long, slow breath. For me. For you. For everyone who might notice. I set the bag down, hands empty now but restless. You don't get to decide that for me. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, then softened. She folded her arms, then unfolded them. You're too young to understand what happens when people talk. Maybe. I stepped closer, not too close. But I understand what happens when people don't. The kettle whistled, shrill in the small kitchen. She reached to turn it off, her hand trembling just enough for me to notice. She poured tea, slid one cup across the counter. For a moment, it felt like all the other Tuesdays. But the silence was heavier, waiting to break. I shouldn't want this, she said finally. Her voice was almost a whisper. Then don't call it that, I said. Her hands stilled on the cup. She looked at me then, tired, wary, but also open in a way I hadn't seen before. What do you want from me? She asked again, softer this time. I thought about all the ways I could answer. The words that would sound too much, too heavy. What I said instead was simple. Just honesty. Her face shifted, something breaking loose. She set the cup down, untouched. Honesty is that I'm scared, she said. Scared of being seen with you. Scared of what it means. Scared of needing it more than I should. The admission hung in the air, fragile. My throat felt tight. I'm scared too, I said. But not of you. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, almost cautiously, she reached across the counter, her fingers brushing the back of my hand. Not a declaration. Not a promise. Just contact. Real. Human. I didn't pull away. She gave the smallest smile, tired but true. Okay, she whispered. That was all. That was enough. Time didn't rush after that night in her kitchen. It unfolded the way seasons change, slow, almost unnoticed, until one day you realize the air feels different. We didn't suddenly start meeting every day. There were still pauses. Weeks when she was too busy, or when I convinced myself to keep my distance. But the distance always closed, eventually. Sometimes it was the cafe again, her at that corner table, me pretending I hadn't been waiting. Other times it was the park bench, the one where she first asked me what I wanted. We didn't always talk much there. Just sat, thermos of tea in her hands, my coffee cooling too quickly. It was never dramatic. And that was the point. I noticed the changes in small ways. Her laugh came easier. Not loud, but unguarded. She started saving me a seat, without asking. Once, when she was carrying groceries, she didn't hesitate. She just handed me the bag, like it was ours to share. And me? I stopped checking the time every Tuesday. It didn't matter if it was 8:47 a.m. or 6:12 p.m. What mattered was that I'd see her again. We never named it. Not out loud. But there were nights when I'd walk her up the stairs, and she'd pause at the door, holding it open just a little longer than needed. And mornings when she'd text me something ordinary. Too much rain for coffee today. Tea instead? And I'd smile, because it felt like more than ordinary. Her son eventually saw me again, this time carrying bags up the stairs. He didn't say anything. Just looked curious, then disappeared into his room. She caught my eye, nervous at first. But when I didn't step back, she let herself exhale. It's not perfect. She still has her walls, and I still fumble for words I can't always say. But we've stopped pretending there's nothing there. One evening, back at the same park bench, she set her thermos down between us. Tea? She asked. I shook my head. Not today. Black coffee then? She teased. I smiled, remembering. Yeah. Brutal. She laughed softly, the same way she had the very first time. And for once, it didn't feel like we were stealing a moment. It felt like we had earned it. Looking back, I don't know when exactly things shifted. Maybe the night she asked me what I wanted. Maybe the morning she called me neighbor. Or maybe it was earlier, when I ordered the same coffee just to feel closer to her. What I do know is this: somewhere between the silence, the missed Tuesdays, and the folded napkins, we found something steady. Not perfect. Not simple. But ours. And that's enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?